Well, good morning and welcome to today's virtually speaking webinar focused on the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. We have two expert panelists joining us, Dawn Tawater and David Luttrell with the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development. Before handing off the presentation to our panelists, I want to mention the question and answer box. As questions arise, please go ahead and pop those into the Q&A box and we will answer them at the conclusion of the presentation. A link to the recorded webinar will be emailed to all registered attendees. You can also find recordings of all past virtually speaking webinars by way of link to our YouTube channel on our website, nwtnjobs.org. I would also like to invite you to follow us on Facebook at American Job Centers of Northwest Tennessee, American Job Centers of Southwest Tennessee, or American Job Centers of Greater Memphis, depending on where you're located in West Tennessee. All of our upcoming webinars and events can be found on our social media. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to our expert panelist, David Luttrell, to get us started on the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program.
Thank you so much. Good morning. When it comes to advancing, being a part of our mission and vision here in the Tennessee Department of Labor and Workforce Development, in terms of advancing workforce development, ensuring that all Tennesseans have access to high quality jobs. What we hope to do today is to give you a better idea of how it is that we contribute, to that mission and to that vision through the administration of the WOTC program, through the administration of the federal bonding program, and also how the employer can participate and benefit from those programs. And let me start by just asking a real simple question. I wonder how many of you have ever heard of WOTC, or the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program, or have an idea of what that is. So the Work Opportunity Tax Credit Program is a federally funded program, and the purpose of which, and I hope to put this in more practical terms, it's about creating an opportunity for people, some people who have historically faced certain barriers to employment challenges, and to give them a chance to move from economic dependency into self-sufficiency, an opportunity to earn that steady income and in the larger picture to care for their families, to contribute to their communities. And the businesses that participate in this program, that provide that employment opportunity, then they have an opportunity to realize a fairly significant reduction in their income tax liability. And I realize, even as I say that, the word significant is somewhat subjective. It depends on what type of business you are. Certainly a larger employer, say a nationwide retailer, or providers in the food service industry, both of which get a lot of my attention this time of year, I'm sure some of you as well, that they could be making hundreds of hires annually. And a unique characteristic of the WOTC program is it really doesn't have any sort of limitation on the number of hires that business might make, and that they might qualify for WOTC credit. And I want to point out in that first paragraph you see up there, that it's not just about hiring someone, gaining an employee, but retaining them. Because employment, at least in my opinion, it's not just a one-time thing. Employment is something that's ongoing. It's always taking place in terms of being employed. Whatever tax credit, whatever WOTC tax credit the employer receives, is going to be based then on the number of hours worked. Again, not just because they made a hire. So whatever tax credit the employer may receive, it's going to be based not just on the fact that they hired someone, but on how long that someone worked. So if they make a hire and that employee works less than 400 hours, say in that first year, the employer is only going to get a percentage of the potential tax credit they could have received. However, if they hire that employee and they work 400 hours or more, then they're going to receive the full benefit of that credit. The next thing I want to show you on this slide is the potential employees that I've been referring to. They're going to fall into one of 14 different categories, or what under the WOTC program, what we call target groups. And each one of these target groups has a certain, as you can see, a certain maximum tax credit amount attached to it. And it ranges anywhere from $1,200 to $9,600. And while there are 14 different groups, 5 of those will fall under what we call qualified veteran status. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. You can also see one of the target groups, as I mentioned, has a potential $1,200 credit. 9 of them offer credits of $2,400 each, and the remaining credits range anywhere from $4,800 to $9,600. Primarily, what we do is we review applications and we review supporting documentation in order to make a determination as to whether or not an application we've received would qualify for WOTC credit. Now, we get a lot of applications, which is like saying Nashville has a lot of traffic. If you look at this graphic here, applications that we've reviewed from 2016 through 2022, that's nearly 1.3 million applications that we've reviewed and made determinations with. Now, we're pretty fortunate in that, and not all states have this, but we have an automated component to our system. So many of the incoming applications, our system is, thanks to Dawn and her hard work, and Justin and their work with our IT department, can make a lot of determinations on these incoming applications, a large number of them. And then my team, we do the rest. So you can see that the result for employers in that same time period, and this is actually taking all target groups into account, is going to be nearly $1 billion. The way we get to that is when we add in SNAP. I asked earlier if anyone had an idea of what the largest target group is that we get applications and review and make determinations on, and it is the SNAP group, what we call target group G. And when you add those in, you're talking about nearly $1 billion in tax credits. I want to share a little bit of information on what those various target groups are, what the qualification requirements are. And again, I hope this is helpful to you. The first target group is target group A, or these are qualified TANF recipients. Again, for those that may not know, TANF is a temporary assistance for needy families. So a qualified TANF recipient is going to be a member of a family that received those benefits, TANF benefits, for any, they don't have to be consecutive, but any 9 months of the 18 months leading up to their hire date. And the credit on that is going to be $2,400 maximum credit. The next one we're going to look at is qualified SNAP veteran. Now, I want to stop for just a moment here. The key term when it comes to a qualified veteran is what creates a qualified veteran in that target group is active duty service. That's going to be someone who has served at least 181 days, because you can see where it says more than 180. So it's 181 days in either regular Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, Coast Guard. All those would qualify. Typically, what would not qualify, service that wouldn't qualify, would be reserves, cadet training, National Guard. Typically, those would not. So a qualified SNAP veteran, again, is going to be a veteran with active duty service 180 days or 181 days or more. And they're a member of a family that received SNAP benefits for at least a 3-month period during the 15-month period ending on the hire date. Qualified recently separated disabled veteran. That's going to be a veteran that's entitled to compensation for service-connected disability, and that's usually, when you look at the handbook or you look at the regulations, they say 10% or more, but typically when we see disabled vets, they're 10% is the minimum. So and also having a hire date, which is not more than 1 year after their release or their discharge from active duty. Qualified unemployed disabled veteran. That's going to be a veteran entitled to compensation for a service-connected disability, and they've had aggregate periods of unemployment of 6 months or more during the 12 months prior to hire. Qualified short-term unemployment or unemployed veteran, that's going to be, again, active duty veteran, 181 days. That has aggregate periods of unemployment of at least 4 weeks, but less than 6 months during their prior to hire. Qualified long-term unemployed veteran, and that's going to be, again, having the active duty, having aggregate periods of unemployment of 6 months or more during the 12 months prior to hire. Qualified ex-felons. And I do want to point out here, and then this is something I get questions a lot about, because um, elsewhere, in the Tennessee Department of Labor, they tend to use terms like justice involved, and the reason we don't is because this is the language of the Department of Labor of the IRS. So it is about someone who's been convicted of a felony under state or federal law and convicted or released from prison no more than 1 year prior to their hire date. Target Group D, designated community resident. Now, this is going to be someone that's at least 18, but under the age of 40 and lives within a rural renewal county or an empowerment zone. And if you're not familiar with those terms, typically, for an empowerment zone or rural renewal community, that's usually a community that's been designated as being economically distressed. And so they qualify for certain federal benefits to help with employment in their area. Voc Rehab, vocational rehab clients, and those are going to be applicants that are currently receiving or have completed authorized aid or ticket to work, Voc Rehab services, or Voc Rehab program for veterans carried out under Chapter 31, Title 38. Qualified summer youth. This is going to be, and this is one of the lower target groups. I think I pointed out earlier, a target group that had a $1,200 credit attached to it. And this is that group, qualified summer youth employee. That's going to be a person that's 16 to 17 years of age on their hire date. They worked for an employer. They were hired between May 1st and September 15th. And they live, again, within that rural renewal county or an empowerment zone. Qualified SNAP, again, that's our largest group. That's going to be an applicant that's at least 18 but under 40 on the hire date, and a member of a family having received SNAP or food stamps, as they used to call them, for all 6 months leading up to their hire date. A qualified SSI recipient, that's going to be someone that's received supplemental security income benefits, SSA, for any month ending within the 60-day period prior to their hire date. Long-term family assistance. This is also a TANF recipient, a member that has received TANF benefits for 18 consecutive months leading up to their hire date. Long-term unemployment. This is one of the more complicated groups that we work with, and that's going to be a qualified long-term unemployment recipient is someone that's been in a period of unemployment that's not less than 27 consecutive weeks, leading up to their hire date, and it needs to include a period somewhere in that. Doesn't have to be all 27 weeks, but somewhere in there, they've received unemployment benefits, that they've received unemployment compensation under state or federal law. We've talked about those who are eligible. I want to say a little bit about who's not eligible for these. And typically in terms of the businesses that make the hire, relatives are not going to be eligible. Non-relative dependents, individuals previously employed, that the exception to that is going to be the summer youth. Self-employed individuals who own a major interest in the company or in the employer. Some additional facts. If you want to learn more about a little more about the tax credit certifications, you can certainly do that on the IRS website, irs.gov. I did want to point out, and this is also, I think, kind of a unique characteristic of this particular credit program, that these credits can be carried back 1 year. They can also be carried forward up to 20 years or until the credit's used, whichever comes first. For the most part, when I've been referring to employers, I've been referring to for-profit entities, but qualified nonprofits, 501c, tax exempt employers that hire WOTC qualified veterans may also apply for the tax credit against certain payroll taxes. Some other things to keep in mind, and this is a real important one, that employers have 28 days from the time that employee starts to submit their applications for this credit. The application forms, the form 8850 and 9061. It's not 28 days from the time they were offered the job or the time they were hired, but from the time they start. We do get a lot of questions about that, so that is something, and typically there's no real leeway on that, so we're very specific on that. Determinations can take as little as a week. I'm going to say that with a little bit of tongue in cheek. We do our best, but we do have a backlog. A certificate is not cash. No one's going to write a check. It comes in the form of a tax credit. And again, it's based off the amount of hours the employee works, not just the fact that they were hired. WOTC is not mandatory. This is not something businesses have to do. It's something we hope they do. We want to encourage them to do it, but it's not a mandatory program, completely optional. I mentioned earlier, we have a hotline available for those who require assistance filing or just want more information, because that's really what we're here for. So we want to make sure we get an opportunity to talk with you, to answer those questions. I always enjoy a conversation, but I'm happy to respond to email as well. If there was one step that I could encourage you to take as an employer, as an HR professional, whoever you might be, this is it. Find the portal on our website, tn.gov/workforce. And I'm going to show you some screenshots. I can tell you quickly, though, that when you go to that site, tn.gov/workforce, you scroll to the bottom and you'll see the WOTC e-portal, and that's where that's where things get started. When you bring up the tn.gov, you'll see a shot like this. Again, scroll down to the bottom, then you'll see that portal. And that's where things are going to get started. Typically, if you're an employer, you're going to start right there. And you can click on the link that says apply now. I would encourage you, though, to look around in there, because there's information on eligibility requirements, target group documentation required, forms, our handbook, and the handbook is a little bit of everything, but it's a wealth of information that I hope you'll take advantage of. And again, if you want to, and I hope you do, want or need to reach out to us, shoot us an email, wotc.info@tn.gov, or call us 844-216-8495. Now, all that being said, I am going to, you've heard more than enough of me. So I want to hand this off to Dawn Tawater, and she is going to talk to you about federal bonding.
Good morning, everyone. I am the state coordinator for federal bonding and for WOTC. And I just want you to know you can feel free to call me if you have any questions about any of either of these programs. What is federal bonding? It is a federal program that is going to help a qualified job applicant get away from the barriers that are keeping them from getting employed. It is an insurance policy to protect the business against any kind of financial loss due to theft, forgery, larceny, embezzlement, anything caused by the employee dishonesty. It does not cover motor vehicles, and it is not a cash bond. It's not just cash in their hands, which some people think it is. The bond is given to the employer free of charge and serves as an incentive to hire the right person for the job, whether they've got something in their background or not. And it does not have to be justice involved related. It can be anything. Who qualifies? Job applicants with questionable backgrounds, ex-offenders, and unlike WOTC, it does not have to be a felony. It can be a misdemeanor. It can be anything. Recovering substance abusers, welfare recipients, poor credit history or bankruptcy, dishonorable discharge from the service, or even disadvantaged youth or families with low income. And it will cover anyone that cannot get a job without getting a bond. It will cover anyone. Basically, if the employer requires the bond and they meet the state's legal age for working, then I'm going to issue the bond. Applying for the bond is pretty easy. You can visit the AJC and arrange a meeting. You can, the claimant can receive coaching on how to bring up the bond during the interview process. The application, however, is online for the employer to complete on or after the start date. The employer is the one that has to complete the application. The bond will not be issued to the applicant. Who is the bonding coordinator? That would be me, Dawn Tawater. Here's my phone number and my email address if you have any questions. Again, the bond is $5,000. It covers them for 6 months. It is free to the employer, and it is guaranteed renewable after the 6 months, but that would be at the employer's cost. Very simple. If you go to tn.gov/workforce and search for federal bonding, you will find these two boxes here, these two links. The federal bonding form is the application, takes less than 2 minutes to complete. And then you have the federal bonding facts. Once the federal bond application has been sent, I will issue the bond. It is issued and sent to Chicago for record. And the employer will receive a letter in the mail on how to use the bond now that it's active. It, like I said earlier, does not equate to cash. And it is a very simple process that very few people take advantage of and could help so many people.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you, Dawn. We do actually have some questions in the Q&A box. I'm going to just read those out loud for the benefit of the group, and then you
Awesome.
guys can answer them. So, David, during your presentation, the question was asked, how long does it typically take for an application to be reviewed? I know you said it could be reviewed in as little as a week. What is our typical time frame that an employer would be looking at if they did submit an application?
If it's, and again, I think about what our automated system is able to do, and it's pretty amazing. But again, that's thanks to Dawn and Justin, who for I'm going to say years, as she can speak to this, worked closely with IT to build a system. So I mean, literally, some of them are going to get responses in 24 to 48 hours. For many of them, it's not the 48 hours. It may be weeks or months.
Yeah, it basically boils down to what target group they're looking for. If it's one of the, like I say, it's a DHS target group, those can be done in 24 to 48 hours. If it is something that requires more documentation, we're relying upon the employer or the consultant to get that information to us. And it's just dependent upon how quick they can get that to us.
Thank you. It asks, it says, are you saying that because they are a family member, it makes them work opportunity tax credit eligible? What if a family member has no work experience and first job? Are they still eligible? And I think that came in during when you were talking about TANF recipients. Again, they may need to clarify that, but the question just says, are you saying because they are a family member, it makes them work opportunity tax credit eligible, like a family member within the household receiving benefits?
I'll take that one for him.
Yeah.
Yes. So if you are a member of a household that is receiving TANF or SNAP benefits, then that does qualify. Those count as your benefits at that point, and that would make you eligible. If that does not answer the question that you're asking, if you would clarify a little more, then we can maybe answer a little better.
Yeah.
If that's not the question, they can clarify in the Q&A box, and we'll revisit.
Yeah.
The next question is, can a staffing agency or a staffing service utilize work opportunity tax credits?
And I'm probably going to let Dawn take that one too, but I do want to go back to the prior question just real quickly, and also mention that with SNAP, you asked about what if it's someone's first job or maybe someone's never worked before. If we're talking about someone that's really young, keep in mind that the SNAP benefit also has an age qualification. So they have to be between 18 and 39. In other words, 18, not yet 40. So I did want to add that in there. And I'm sorry, now I'm going to ask you to repeat the last question.
Can a staffing agency, an employment agency, utilize the work opportunity tax credit program?
Yes, they can. And what's good about that is not only can the staffing agency utilize it, but if the company that they have sent them to chooses to hire them at that point, then that company is still, even though they were working for the company, that company is still able to utilize the tax credit as well.
Thank you. What kind of statement comes back to the employer for the tax credit? Can you speak more about how that is applied when filing taxes?
Okay, now we don't handle the filing of the taxes. What we do is we issue a certification letter that lets you know that you met the pre-qualifications for the tax credit, and then it will depend on how many hours that they worked as to how much of a tax credit they get. And so that would be something really that they would work with their accountant with.
The certification is given or delivered electronically. So it's put in their portal. This portal that the employer creates, or if they're using another, a consultant or something of that nature, Everything is done in there. The applications are submitted there. If we need documentation, we request it there. We'll put in there what we call a needs letter, and if their applicant does qualify, that's where we'll drop the tax certificate in. So everything is going to be very easily accessible for the employer.
We have one more question regarding the designated community resident category. What is the resource tool that we can use to determine if an employee's address is within an empowerment zone or is a qualifying location? With our company being located in a designated distressed county, I'm excited to learn that we may qualify for this program on that category, but would like a little deeper explanation to make sure I'm understanding correctly.
Now, I can send a link to you if you want to send it out with the link that you send out. But the only designated community in Tennessee is Knoxville. So I don't know if they are in Knoxville or not, but that is the only designated community in Tennessee. But there is a link. You can actually go to usdol.gov's and /WOTC, I believe it is. And you can get to the link there. They've got a tool on their website that allows you to look up and determine whether you're in that area or not. But I can send a link to you, Ginger, if you want me to, and you can send that out.
We did have another question come in after that one. If the temporary service or the employment service uses the work opportunity tax credit, does that mean that the hiring employer only gets the remainder or a full tax credit that starts over again?
So yes, they would be able to get the full, because they would be a new employee to the new employer. So they would get the full tax credit if they were hired on full time with the employer. But I did want to go over one other thing. When David asked the question earlier about which target group had the most certificates, and someone brought up ex-felons. Ex-felons is actually a very low target group that we have. And I think part of it is, them not being able to pass the background check. And with the federal bonding, if we could just get that out there as well, that would help increase that number and get some more tax credits. That would be something that, they could utilize to help get those in more.
And I wanted to mention as well, our business services representatives have hard copies of that work opportunity tax credit handbook. And so we are happy to hand deliver those to any of our local employers in West Tennessee who want to have a copy in hand. And, we'd be happy to talk to them about any of our other programs that would, braid funding in with those programs, such as on the job training, couple order training, things like that. So
yeah,
if you're an employer and you're on the call and you're interested in receiving one of those hard copy handbooks, in addition to having the online website option, you can reach out to your business services representative and we'll get that delivered to you. So Dawn and David, I just want to thank you for all the information that you shared with us today, and thank all of our attendees for attending today's live webinar. Again, I mentioned earlier, there will be a link to the recording that will be sent to all registered attendees. So feel free to pass that link along to others who may benefit from learning about the work opportunity tax credit and federal bonding. You may also want to visit nwtnjobs.org to see our past webinars and to follow us on social media for our future topics. Our next virtually speaking webinar will be on March the 7th, and our topic is going to be artificial intelligence or AI in the workplace, and we look forward to seeing everyone on March the 7th. Thank you for attending and have a great day.